All right, so you want to land that dream job at a big tech company, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, the whole shebang.
Yeah,
We're going to break down what it really takes to get hired at these tech giants. And to help us with this deep dive, we have Gayle McDowell's book, The Google Resume.
great book.
Yeah, it's packed with insider advice and real-world examples. So let's get started. First things first, and we hear this all the time
Yes.
about startups being the cool place to be, fast-paced, exciting, you know,
Uh,
chance to wear multiple hats, but is it all it's cracked up to be?
well, I think that's the age-old debate, isn't it? Startups, they have that allure. I mean, they are exciting,
Right.
fast-paced, and you often get to, like you said, wear multiple hats.
Yeah.
But the thing about startups that people don't always think about is the failure rate,
Oh, right.
and that can be a real
Yeah.
headache for your resume.
So it's almost like a career dead end.
It can be.
Yeah.
You spend a couple years at a startup, it goes nowhere, and then you're sitting across from a recruiter at Google trying to explain that gap on your resume.
Right, right.
That's tough. Plus, big companies often have these structured mentorship programs
Oh, yeah.
and established career paths that startups just can't offer.
That makes sense, yeah. It's almost like, teaching yourself to cook versus going to culinary school.
Yeah.
You could be a great cook either way, but,
Right.
culinary school, you have that official stamp of approval.
Exactly. And don't forget, big tech companies, I mean, they're famous for those pokes for a reason, right?
Yeah, the perks.
Free gourmet meals,
Yeah.
on-site gyms,
Nap pods.
even nap pods, you name it. And it's more than just free stuff. It's a company culture that values employee well-being.
Okay, so maybe I'll hold off on quitting my day job to join that ping pong startup just yet. But let's talk about another big myth, the perfect GPA. Do you really need straight A's to get into Google?
You do not. I mean, take John, for example.
Okay.
John, he had a 2.5 GPA
Okay.
from Dartmouth. He's now a program manager at Microsoft.
Really? 2.5. How did he swing that?
Well, maybe he wasn't super interested in, traditional coursework,
Yeah.
but he was a whiz at robotics.
Okay.
Led his team to second place in this national robotics competition, and that's what caught Microsoft's eye.
Wow.
It wasn't his grades, it was the fact that he built something, he'd achieved something tangible.
So it's more than just hitting the books. You have to show that you can actually do something.
Right. Like Beth's GPA wasn't stellar.
Okay.
She had some family issues going on, but despite that, she landed multiple offers
Oh, wow.
from Google, Microsoft, and Amazon.
That's pretty impressive. How'd she do that?
Well, it's all about initiative. She was president of her sorority.
Okay.
She earned 2 degrees in 4 years, and she took on all these projects outside of her coursework. I mean, she really showed them that she could handle challenges and excel,
Wow.
even outside of a classroom setting.
So, okay, grades aren't everything. It's more about, demonstrating your abilities through those real-world achievements. Like you said, initiative.
Yeah, initiative. And that actually leads perfectly into the power of projects,
Okay.
which is something that's super important,
Right.
whether you're a computer science major
Yeah.
or a music major or anything in between, really.
Right.
It's those tangible skills
Yeah.
and hands-on experience that make all the difference.
So you're talking like building an app or designing a website.
Those are great, but it can even be more unconventional than that.
Okay.
I mean, remember that music major
Yeah.
who landed the job
Yeah.
designing sound effects for Xbox?
Wait, really? How do you even get into that? Did he have some super high-tech studio?
Nope. Household items to create realistic sound effects for the games. And Xbox loved it because he showed creativity,
Wow.
initiative, a willingness to think outside the box.
So even if you're not, coding all day long, you can still show that technical aptitude, like you're saying, by building things,
Right.
launching projects, maybe even helping nonprofits with their tech needs.
Exactly. It's all about showing that you're a problem solver.
Right.
You're a learner.
Yeah.
You can figure things out.
All right. Okay, so we've got our projects, we've got our, experience, and our GPA may not be perfect, but that's fine.
Right.
But let's be real. Even with a killer resume, the online application process can feel like just throwing your resume into a black hole.
Oh, it definitely can.
Mm.
It's almost like, a very, very serious game of duck, duck, goose.
Okay.
Your resume is going up against a ton of others. How do you become the goose?
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
So how do I avoid being just another duck in the pile?
Well, first of all, you have to follow instructions meticulously.
Oh, okay.
If they ask for specific documents or information, You give them exactly what they're looking for.
So no sending a generic cover letter when they ask for a specific writing sample.
Exactly. You'd be surprised how many people get tossed out just for not following simple directions.
Gotcha.
Another important thing is to apply early.
Oh, the early bird gets the worm.
Exactly.
Oh.
The earlier you apply, the smaller the applicant pool, the more
Mhm.
attention your application is going to get.
Okay.
And you avoid getting lost in that post-holiday application tsunami.
Makes sense. Okay, what about keywords? Do those really matter?
Keywords are super important.
Okay.
Recruiters use them to filter through, hundreds of applications.
Right.
So make sure your resume includes the relevant terms from that job description.
So, I mean, if they're looking for project management experience, don't just say, I managed things. Actually say project management.
Right. Use those keywords, but don't just throw them in randomly. Make sure they actually fit.
Got it. So speak their language.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, here's a tip to stand out even more. Go beyond that online application.
Okay.
If you can find out the name of the recruiter,
Yeah.
send them a personalized note. Engage with the company on social media.
So make a personal connection rather than just being another faceless application.
Exactly. And speaking of connections, probably the most effective way to get noticed is through referrals.
Referrals, okay. I've heard these are like the holy grail of job hunting.
They are.
But they can be pretty hard to come by.
They are powerful.
Yeah.
They're basically like having a trusted friend vouch for you
Right.
to the company.
So how do I even get a referral? Like my network is pretty small. I don't know anybody who works at Google.
Well, I think the first step is to look at your existing network.
Okay.
Talk to friends,
Yeah.
classmates, former colleagues. You never know who might have a connection
Okay.
that you could leverage.
I'm a little nervous to, reach out to people that I haven't spoken to in a while.
Yeah.
Ask for a favor.
Well, think of it as building genuine relationships.
Okay.
Comment on their blog posts, engage with them on LinkedIn, offer to help with a project.
Yeah.
And then when you do reach out,
Yeah.
think about framing it as an informational interview.
Oh, okay.
You're not asking for a job, you're just seeking advice and insights.
That takes the pressure off a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so let's say I've managed to snag a referral.
Right.
Now I need a resume that doesn't suck, basically.
Yes, you do.
What are the secrets to a standout resume?
So first and foremost, it needs to be accomplishment-oriented.
Okay.
You don't just list your responsibilities, you highlight what you achieved.
Okay, so instead of saying, manage social media accounts,
Yeah.
say something like, increase social media engagement by 20% in 6 months.
Exactly. And whenever possible, use numbers to quantify your impact.
Right.
And make sure that your resume is laser-focused
Okay.
on the specific job that you're applying for.
So if I'm applying for a marketing role, I should highlight my marketing experience, even if it was just a volunteer gig at, a student organization.
Exactly. Tailor your resume to each specific job
Okay.
and highlight the most relevant experience. Another important thing is to make sure your language is universally understood.
Oh, okay.
Avoid jargon or acronyms that only people in your super specific field would understand.
Gotcha. So keep it clean, professional, easy to read.
Exactly.
No typos.
No typos.
No fancy fonts.
No fancy fonts.
No paragraphs that go on forever.
Think of it like a billboard.
Right.
The most important information should just jump out at the reader instantly.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. But I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I look at my resume and I think, this is boring.
I get it.
How do I make it stand out?
Let's look at some examples.
Okay.
Gayle's book has some great case studies. Remember Bill?
Bill, refresh my memory.
So Bill's resume was this classic case of too much information.
Ugh.
It was just this laundry list of every technology he'd ever touched.
Okay.
But there was no clear story, no focus on his actual achievements.
So it was more like a technical manual than an actual,
Right.
Persuasive argument.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then there was Steve. Steve's resume was all about responsibilities,
Okay.
not results. So, managed release cycles, implemented new features.
Right. Telling me what he did, not what he achieved.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then you have Gina.
Okay.
Gina's resume was like a masterclass
Okay.
in showcasing accomplishments.
Oh, wow.
She highlighted quantifiable results, she used strong action verbs, and she tailored her experience to the specific job she was applying for.
So it's like a highlight reel of her career wins
Exactly.
with the evidence to back it up.
Yeah. Her resume told a story of someone who gets things done.
So, okay, I'm seeing a pattern here. A great resume is specific, quantifiable, accomplishment-focused.
Absolutely.
It's not just a list of tasks.
Right.
It's a persuasive argument,
Yeah,
for why you're the right person for the job.
exactly. And that same principle applies to cover letters, which brings us to
Oh, cover letters.
the age-old question.
Yeah.
Are cover letters really necessary in the digital age?
I feel like some people say they're outdated. Some people swear by them. What's the real deal?
Right, right. I mean, cover letters. Well, welcome back to our deep dive into landing your dream job in tech.
All right, so last time we talked about startups versus big companies, busting that GPA myth.
Right.
And, the power of referrals.
Yes.
But now I'm ready to get into the nitty-gritty, the interview.
Right.
This is the main event.
It is.
Where you really have to prove yourself. So.
Absolutely. Preparation is key,
Okay.
just like for any big performance.
Right.
But, we've talked about the prep grid, researching the company.
Yeah.
But what about those interview questions?
Yeah.
I mean, some of them are so strange.
Oh, yeah. I've heard some real head scratchers.
Right. It's like, what are they even looking for?
Right, like, why are manhole covers round? What does that even have to do with?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
The kayaking.
Quoting. That's a classic one.
Yeah.
And you know what? I honestly don't think they care that much about the actual answer.
Yeah.
It's more about how you think.
Okay.
Can you approach a problem logically,
Right.
even if it seems bizarre? Can you break it down
Yeah.
into steps?
Yeah.
Make reasonable assumptions? And can you explain your thought process clearly?
So it's not about knowing trivia. It's about showing off my problem-solving skills.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And it's the same with those behavioral questions.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, tell me about a time you failed.
Yeah, or a time you disagreed with a teammate.
Right, right.
It's not a trick question. They're not trying to trip you up.
Okay.
They want to see your self-awareness, your honesty, and
Okay.
how you learn from your experiences.
So it's okay to admit that I've made mistakes as long as I can show how I grew from them.
Absolutely.
Okay, good, because
Yeah.
I've made a lot of mistakes.
We all have.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the technical interview.
Okay, yeah, this is where I get a little nervous
Right.
because I know my stuff, but like explaining it under pressure,
It's different, isn't it?
it's a whole other ball game.
Right. In technical interviews, they often involve things like coding on a whiteboard
Oh, yeah.
or discussing algorithms.
So the key here is practice.
Okay.
Practice, practice, practice.
Got it.
And not just in your head,
Yeah.
Actually get used to talking through your code as you write it.
So, find a friend who can be my mock interviewer and throw code problems at me.
Exactly, exactly. And when you're in the interview,
Right.
don't be afraid to ask clarifying questions.
Okay.
That shows that you're thinking critically
Yep.
and that you're not just jumping into a solution
Yeah.
without fully understanding the problem.
Okay, that makes sense. What about those estimation questions?
Oh, the estimation.
Like how many golf balls fit in a school bus?
Right.
I always freeze up on those.
They can be tricky,
Yeah.
but again, they're not looking for a perfect answer.
Oh,
What they want to see is, can you break down a complex problem?
okay.
Can you make reasonable estimates using what you do know
Right.
and communicate your logic
Okay.
clearly?
So even if my final answer is way off, if I can explain how I got there, that's valuable.
It's more about the journey
Right.
than the destination.
Okay.
And sometimes you might even get those truly out of left field brain teasers
Right.
that seem impossible, but the key there is just stay calm,
Right.
think creatively,
Yeah.
and don't be afraid to have a little fun with it.
So even if I'm stumped, I shouldn't just give up. I should try to come up with something.
Absolutely. It's a chance to show your personality
Right.
and how you handle the unexpected.
Okay.
Okay, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the HR screen.
Right.
Now, this is often seen as less technical,
Yeah.
but it's still important.
Right. This is where they're trying to figure out if you're a good cultural fit.
Exactly.
Like if you're someone they'd actually want to work with.
Yeah, if you'd be a good teammate.
Every day. Yeah.
So they'll ask about things like your career goals,
Right.
your reasons for wanting to join the company,
Okay.
and what you know about their culture.
Yeah.
They want to see if your values align with theirs and whether you'd be a good addition to the team.
So I need to show that I'm not just qualified, but I'd also be a good colleague
Right, and a good fit.
and fit in with the team dynamic.
Yeah, and be genuine.
Okay.
Let your personality shine through.
Right.
Don't try to be someone you're not.
Right.
They can usually spot that a mile away.
You mentioned how much of an interviewer's demeanor is about them, not me.
Right.
But are there any body language cues that I should be paying attention to?
Well, I think it's a balance.
Right.
You want to be aware,
Yeah.
but not overthink it. Right.
Yeah. Right.
So good eye contact, but don't stare them down.
Yeah.
Smiling, being approachable,
I
and be aware of your own body language, too.
Okay.
So sit up straight,
Yeah.
project confidence.
Right.
Try to avoid, like, fidgeting
Right.
or any nervous habits.
Yeah, so be professional, but be myself.
Exactly.
Okay, good.
Now let's talk about whiteboarding.
Oh, the whiteboard. This is
This is a big one,
this is scary.
especially for software engineers.
Writing code on a whiteboard in front of people is terrifying.
It can be, but the key to conquering whiteboarding is practice.
Practice,
Practice, practice, practice. Get used to writing code on a larger surface,
Right.
talking through your thought process
Okay.
as you go,
Okay.
and explaining your choices clearly.
So I should basically treat my bedroom wall like a giant whiteboard from now on.
Well, maybe not your wall specifically,
Right,
but,
yeah.
Find a large surface,
Yeah.
get comfortable writing code on it,
Right.
and, don't be afraid to ask for a different color marker if you need it,
Right.
or to erase and start over.
Okay.
It's more important to get the logic right
That's
than
right.
to, have perfect handwriting on
Yeah.
the first try.
Yeah, that's reassuring.
So behavioral questions, how do we tackle those?
Yeah, those are always a little tricky because it's not always obvious what the interviewer is looking for.
Right, but there's a method to the madness. There's a framework you can use. It's called the STAR method.
So it's our,
Situation,
right?
task, action,
Yeah.
result.
Right.
It's a way to tell a clear,
Okay.
concise story
Right.
about your experience.
Okay, break it down for me.
Okay, so first you describe the situation you were in,
Okay.
then explain the task you had to complete.
Okay.
Next, describe the specific actions you took,
Okay.
and finally, highlight the result of your actions.
Okay, so it's about telling a story that showcases my skills, my accomplishments,
Yes.
but in a way that's structured,
Yes.
easy for the interviewer to follow.
It's a framework.
Okay.
And don't forget those specific examples.
Right.
Instead of just saying you're a team player, describe a specific situation
Okay.
where you collaborated
Yeah.
effectively with a team to achieve a goal.
Right. Show, don't tell.
Exactly.
Okay. That makes a lot more sense. Now, what happens if I get stumped? What if I draw a blank?
Well, it happens to the best of us.
Right.
If you get stuck, it's okay to pause. Collect your thoughts.
Right.
You can also ask clarifying questions.
Right. Yeah.
Or even rephrase the question in your own words,
Okay.
just to buy yourself some time.
So it's better to take a moment to think than to just blurt out the first thing that comes to mind.
Absolutely.
Which might be gibberish.
And, don't be afraid to say, I'm not sure, but let me think about that for a second.
Okay.
That shows you're thoughtful.
Okay.
You're not afraid to admit when you don't know something.
Makes me feel a lot better, all right?
Okay, now what about those really tricky questions?
Ooh.
Like, what's your biggest weakness?
Oh.
Why should we hire you?
Right, right.
Those are classics, but you can approach them strategically.
Okay.
So for the biggest weakness question, choose a weakness that's not directly related to the job
Okay.
and explain how you're working to improve it.
So don't say I'm terrible at coding.
If you're applying for a software engineering job,
Right, exactly.
choose something that's more of a personality quirk.
Yep.
Or a skill that you're still developing.
Okay.
And for why should we hire you? I mean,
Yeah.
that's your chance to shine.
Yeah.
Highlight your unique skills and experience.
Okay.
Connect them directly to the company's needs and goals.
So it's like my elevator pitch.
It is.
Concise, compelling, tailored to the company.
You got it. And the role.
Don't forget enthusiasm.
Oh, right. Enthusiasm. Nobody wants to hire someone who's boring
Right, exactly.
or unenthusiastic.
Tech companies are looking for people who are passionate,
Yes.
excited about the work.
Okay.
So ask insightful questions.
Okay.
Engage with the interviewer.
Right.
Let your enthusiasm shine through.
Okay, I can do that.
All right, so we've talked about what to do during the interview.
Right.
Now what about the aftermath?
Right. What happens after I walk out of the room?
What do you do? Well, one of the most important things is to follow up with a thank you note.
Even in this digital age, I thought those were a little old-fashioned.
A well-written thank you note can really make a difference.
It shows your appreciation for their time,
Right.
reinforces your interest in the position,
Okay.
and it's a chance to make a final positive impression.
All right, so what makes a good thank you note? Should I just say, thanks for the interview?
Go a little bit beyond that.
Okay.
Personalize it
Right.
to each interviewer.
Okay.
Mention something specific that you discussed during the interview,
Oh, okay.
and you can even use it to address any concerns that might have come up.
Okay, so if I fumbled on a technical question, I could, briefly reiterate my understanding or show that I'm eager to learn more.
Exactly. It shows you're self-aware and willing to go the extra mile.
Okay, now what about the waiting game? How long is too long to wait to hear back?
It really depends on the company and the role.
Right.
But generally, you should follow up with your recruiter within a week or two of
Okay.
the interview.
Okay.
And if you don't hear back after a few weeks, it's okay to follow up again.
Okay, so I shouldn't be afraid to reach out,
Right.
but also be respectful of their time.
Yeah. Exactly. Be polite, professional, and don't be a pest.
Don't be a pest. Got it. Okay, so let's say the stars align and I get the offer.
Okay.
Time to celebrate, right?
Yes.
But wait, I've heard that it's important to negotiate the offer. Is that true? Even for entry-level positions?
Negotiating can feel intimidating,
Yeah.
but it's an important part of the process.
Okay.
Even for entry-level roles,
Right.
it shows that you know your worth.
Right.
You're advocating for yourself.
Okay, so what should I be negotiating? Just salary?
Well, salary is definitely important,
Yeah.
but it's not the only thing.
Okay.
Consider other aspects of the offer as well,
Okay.
like benefits, equity,
Mm.
even signing bonuses.
Right.
Do your research on industry benchmarks
Okay.
for your role and your experience level,
Right.
so you have a realistic idea of what to ask for.
Yeah, and be prepared to explain why I deserve what I'm asking for.
Exactly.
Just like with the resume and cover letter.
Yes, make a strong case.
I have to make my case.
Be confident, professional, and respectful throughout the negotiation.
Right.
Remember, you're not just haggling over a price tag.
Yeah.
You're building a relationship with your future employer.
It's like the final level of the job hunting game.
It is. It is. But even though we've reached the end of part 2, our journey isn't over yet.
Oh, I'm ready for the next challenge. What's on the agenda?
Well, in part 3, we're going to explore a specific niche within the tech world, how to land those coveted gaming roles.
Oh, that's exciting. I've always been curious about what it takes to work in the gaming industry.
It's a fascinating world,
Yeah.
and we'll delve into the unique skills
Yeah.
and strategies you need to stand out from the crowd.
I can't wait. See you in part 3. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've talked a lot about, landing a job in tech.
Yes.
But now we're going to zoom in on a world that's near and dear to my heart, the gaming industry.
Oh, nice.
Because, who hasn't dreamed of working on their favorite game?
Right. It's a dream job for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And for good reason.
Yeah.
It's such a cool industry. So much passion, creativity, cutting-edge technology.
So what sets it apart from, traditional software development, besides, getting to play games all day?
Well, the culture is definitely different. It's a lot more relaxed, informal.
Oh, okay.
Think jeans and T-shirts, not suits and ties.
Right, right.
And there's a huge emphasis on collaboration and teamwork.
Oh, okay.
Because game development is a really iterative process.
Right.
It takes close coordination between designers, artists, programmers, producers, everyone.
So it's like a giant creative team sport.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
It's all about working together to bring those amazing game worlds to life.
So how do you stand out in such a creative and collaborative industry?
Well, first and foremost, you have to demonstrate your passion
Okay.
for gaming.
Yeah.
And I don't just mean playing games in your free time.
Okay.
Stay updated on industry trends.
Right.
Go to gaming conferences. Participate in online communities.
So show that you're really invested.
Yeah, show that you're a true fan.
Right, more than just a casual gamer.
Exactly. And when you're applying for jobs, make sure you tailor your resume and cover letter
Right.
to highlight your gaming experience.
Okay.
Mod games,
Right.
create your own levels, participate in game jams.
Okay.
These are all things that will catch a recruiter's eye.
It's about showing that I'm not just a player, but someone who's actively creating,
That's right.
contributing to the gaming world.
Exactly. And speaking of creation, a portfolio is absolutely essential.
Okay, so what kind of portfolio are we talking about here? Like a collection of the games that I've played?
Not quite. It's more about showcasing your skills.
Okay.
So if you're an artist, you would include things like
Okay.
character designs,
Yeah.
environment concepts,
Oh,
3D
yeah.
models.
Okay.
If you're a programmer, you'd showcase coding projects, game demos, mods that you've created.
So it's like my highlight reel of my best work tailored to the specific roles I'm applying for.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to get creative with how you present your portfolio.
Okay.
A website is great, but you could also do a video reel,
Right.
maybe even a physical portfolio that you bring to interviews.
So think outside the box.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Now, what about interviews for gaming jobs? Are they different from the typical tech interviews we've been talking about?
They tend to have a more casual vibe,
Okay.
but the core principles are the same.
Okay.
Preparation is key.
Got it.
So be ready to talk about your favorite games, what you like about them, what you would do differently. Show them that you're not just a player, you're a critical thinker
Right.
who understands game design.
So be ready to talk about more than just the latest releases.
Yes.
Show that I appreciate the history,
The history.
evolution of games,
Yeah.
and game design.
And be prepared for some curveball questions.
Oh, okay.
They might ask you to design a game on the spot
Oh, wow.
or analyze the strengths and weaknesses of a particular game.
Okay, that sounds a little intense. Any tips for handling, like, those design challenges?
Well, think about the classic elements of game design.
Okay.
The core loop,
Yeah.
the player's motivations, the challenges, the rewards.
Right.
And don't be afraid to think outside the box.
Okay.
Come up with a unique concept, a novel mechanic, a fresh take on an existing genre.
So it's not about giving the right answer. It's about showing my creativity,
Exactly.
my understanding of game design principles.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about breaking into the industry
Okay.
without prior professional experience.
Yeah, because it's that classic catch-22.
It is.
You need experience to get a job, but you need a job to get experience.
Right. So how do you break free from that cycle?
Right.
Well, internships are a fantastic way
Okay.
to gain that real-world experience and make those connections.
Yeah.
A lot of gaming companies offer internships specifically for students or recent grads.
Okay, what about those of us who aren't in school anymore?
Well, internships might not always be an option,
Okay.
but there are other things you can do.
Okay.
Volunteer for a game development project,
Okay.
contribute to open source game engines.
Right.
Even teaching yourself a new skill. All of those things can demonstrate your passion and initiative.
So it's about, finding opportunities to learn and grow,
Exactly.
even if it's not a formal paid position.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of personal projects.
Okay.
Creating your own games.
Right.
Even if they're small and simple.
Right.
It shows that you're willing to put in the work
Okay.
and learn by doing.
So even if it's, a simple mobile game or a text adventure or something like that,
Yeah. Put in the effort.
it's worth it.
Add it to your portfolio.
Okay. What about game jams? I've heard about those.
Game jams are great.
Yeah.
They're events where teams come together to create a game
Okay.
in a very short amount of time,
Mm-hmm.
usually like a weekend
Wow.
or a week.
So it's like a pressure cooker for game development?
They can be intense,
Uh,
but they're fun.
yeah.
And it's a great way to learn new skills,
Right.
collaborate with others,
Yeah.
and see a project through to completion.
Okay.
And speaking of collaboration, connections are really crucial in the gaming industry.
Yeah, I feel like you've mentioned connections before, but it seems like it's especially important.
Especially important in
Yeah.
a creative field like gaming.
Okay.
Yeah, the gaming world, it's a pretty close-knit community.
Right.
Knowing the right people can definitely open doors.
So attend industry events.
Yeah,
Join online forums.
Yeah.
Connect with developers whose work you admire.
exactly. Be active in the community,
Right.
both online and offline.
Okay.
And don't be afraid to reach out and build those relationships.
Offer to help with projects.
Yeah, ask for advice.
Yeah.
Just strike up a conversation about a game you both love.
Right. You never know.
You never know where it might lead.
So be proactive. Put myself out there.
Exactly. One last piece of advice,
Okay.
especially for those trying to break into the gaming industry.
Yeah.
Be persistent.
Oh.
It's a tough industry.
Right.
Rejection is part of the process.
Yeah.
Don't give up on your dream.
So keep learning, keep creating, keep connecting, and don't let those rejection letters get me down.
Exactly. Keep honing your skills.
Yeah.
Keep building that portfolio and keep making those connections. And who knows, maybe one day we'll be playing your game.
That's the dream. Well, that wraps up our deep dive
It does.
into landing a job in tech, from the big picture all the way to, like you said, breaking into that world of gaming.
It's been a journey.
It has. We've covered a ton of information.
We have.
But the biggest takeaway, I think, is that landing your dream job,
Yeah.
whether it's at Google or a small indie game studio.
It takes more than just skills and experience.
Right.
It takes passion, perseverance, and a willingness to constantly learn and grow.
So keep exploring,
In creating.
keep creating, and keep pushing yourself.
Level up your game.
Level up your game, exactly. And who knows, maybe one day you'll be the expert we're interviewing on the deep dive.
I would love that.
Thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.